Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 104. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Know the episode schedules kind of got jumbled around a little bit. Talked to you guys yesterday and trying to stay on our normal Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. Plus, we got plenty more to talk about. Dave, Pittsburgh agreeing to a new free agent contract that is with running back Kenneth Gainwell of the Philadelphia Eagles. Moves can become official starting later today, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, when the new league year officially kicks off. Can assume the DK Metcalf will that trade will officially process then as well. So, Dave, just 24 hours ago, and plenty more to talk about, although no quarterback news has been made official, at least not as of 10:26 a.m. Wednesday morning.
Happy Wednesday. Rodgers watch continues on. And is today he's going to be on Pat McAfee show? I think some people are speculating that.
Did someone say that? I have no idea.
He definitely wasn't on yesterday, but and some people they're just guessing. They don't know what he's
Okay, so McAfee himself has not said anything?
I don't think he said. People are guessing. I think that he will be on there, and people are guessing that today's the day that Rodgers will make his decision. I don't think anybody really knows, though.
They're going to see that every single day until he signs.
Right. I think people are hoping and wanting to get this news behind them, as are we and all. How the hell did we even get here with Aaron Rodgers? You roll back through, going back through kind of all the the rumblings and Art Rooney II saying, yeah, we're in conversations with Russell Wilson and representatives of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and the hope is we re-sign one of those guys, and then Omar saying we're going to keep all options open, and lo and behold, here we are talking about Aaron Rodgers now. Just you never know what to expect with this thing, so. Anyway, we'll wait and see what happens maybe today with Rodgers, if today is the day.
I want to start in a moment talking about Kenneth Gainwell, but just let me ask you really quickly before I forget the question. If Rodgers ends up coming to Pittsburgh, and it sounds like the Giants are being competitive, and this is no sure thing, even though I believe Pittsburgh makes by far the most amount of sense for Rodgers, how do you think the team will spin bringing in Rodgers and basically spurring away Russell Wilson, when clearly they could sign him and clearly he wants to be a Steeler and clearly he is not at the top of their list? He's maybe their fourth choice, if that, behind Fields, Darnold, and Rodgers. How do you think the team will address that, given that Art Rooney and Omar Khan said we want to bring back one of Fields or Russ?
That's a great question. Just that they'll say that they kept all options open, and they're the proverbial we're trying to put ourselves in the best position to win a championship line and all like that. How else can they do it?
Mm-hmm. And the spin, I know, ultimately isn't going to matter. And frankly, when will we even hear from Khan and Rooney next? I guess Khan pre-draft, Rooney, I'm not entirely sure, maybe owners meetings, I suppose, but just a thought in my head of how that will all unfold. But we'll keep an eye out on the quarterback situation. No one knows the timetable on Rodgers. Sooner the better for us and for, frankly, everybody, but we're all just waiting as Rodgers weighs his options.
Yep, and it sounds like for him it's down to the Giants and the Steelers, which it seems to have been the case for the last several days or whatnot. So I don't know. We'll sit and wait. We'll definitely talk about it as soon as we get a decision here.
All right, let's talk about some non-quarterback news here. Pittsburgh agreeing to terms reportedly with former Philadelphia Eagles running back Kenneth Gainwell, reportedly, according to Jordan Schultz, a one-year deal. We don't know the money on that. I imagine it's not going to be a huge contract in what seems to be a fairly depressed running back market because of that strong rookie class incoming. Gainwell, 4 years in Philadelphia. mid-round, late-round pick out of Memphis a couple years back. Third down type of a guy, space player, brings some juice to an offense, looking for some juice. Dave, your impressions of adding Kenneth Gainwell?
I mean, for the price, and I would imagine that this is going to be probably damn near close to a minimal contract. The fact that it's a 1-year deal, it's not going to be overly expensive at all. It might even end up being a veteran benefit contract that includes, I don't know, 167 500 167,500 signing bonus within it. So as far as the player goes, you got a guy that the Steelers obviously have some familiarity with. I think even dating back. What was the post that you had yesterday on the Twitter the Twitter remark about the Steelers circling back to a guy that they know and all like that?
Yeah, they had pre-draft interest in Gainwell. We don't know the exact specifics of it, but I know there were multiple times where Gainwell noted that Pittsburgh had been contacting him. I think he said before his pro day, the Falcons and Steelers were talking to him the most. And someone made the good point that at that time, the Falcons head coach was one Arthur Smith, now the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. So it all kind of comes together a couple years later.
The thing with him, you got an undersized back, shifty guy that coming off, I believe, his rookie contract out of Memphis. Let's see, I think I tracked down, including the playoffs, 5 runs he has of greater than or 20 yards or greater. None of them over 40 though, so they're all within that 20 to 39-yard range. I think as long as like 35 for his career, and that was a touchdown overall. There he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And the brief little film that I looked at on him, not the best pass protector, a willing pass protector, but not, obviously not the best skill set when it comes to him. Once again, he can make you miss. He was the one that gets the Steelers in the most recent meeting, I think, made a couple of people miss out in space there, was used as kind of a compliment, obviously, part of that backfield behind Barkley last year. Guy that can play some special teams. I think he had a career high 13 or 19 or whatever snaps on special teams last year. And I think most of those came on either the kickoff return or kickoff coverage teams. So it gives you a little bit of juice there. But I think this just gives you more of kind of the skill set of a Jaylen Warren overall, although he can run with power. Go look at a couple of runs of his that weren't 20 yards, being able to break after first contact and all like that. So look, Najee Harris goes out the door. You need to start adding back to that room. It does not prevent you from adding a running back in the draft here, and assuming the price comes in at $2 million or less, I mean, nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
My first thought when I saw the news of them signing Gainwell was they saw what Gainwell did to Pittsburgh in 2024 and said, let's add some of that. And in that game, he had only 7 carries for 20 yards, but 3 catches for, I think, 40 yards or so, and all 3 were third down conversions, and one nearly scored. He made a couple guys miss. He juked out Dante Jackson one time, split defenders on another catch on the left side. And so I think Pittsburgh likes that, space player a little bit, get him out there one-on-one. The straight line speed isn't amazing. It's a little more quick than fast, but somebody that adds a little different element to this offense that can, again, get out on the corner and make a guy miss. Now, I do think you're right for a guy that is going to be talked about as kind of a playmaking back, big play back, some speed, some athleticism, which he has. He's not always translated that into big NFL plays. His longest career rush is 32 yards. His longest catch is 20 yards on nearly 400 career touches. He averaged 3.9 yards per carry last year, I think along a 20 on 75 rushing attempts, even though he played in a great environment and offense behind that Eagles offensive line where Saquon Barkley was ripping off 60-yard touchdowns routinely. Now, obviously, Gainwell isn't Barkley. Opportunities were still fairly limited, but I do like the different dynamic overall. There is special teams value. He did kick returns last year, averaged 25 yards per return there. Pittsburgh certainly needs help. They were the worst kick return unit in 2024. So Yeah, I'm basically with you. If you have a depth chart of Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, and insert draft pick here, that is, I think, a workable running back room behind hopefully an improved and better offensive line.
Yeah, and we'll see once this all becomes official with him and he signs on the dotted line. Maybe Cordell Patterson goes out the door at that point.
Yeah, that would make sense. You could hang on to him, like you said in the past. The money isn't a killer, and so if you want to just hold on to him and go into training camp as some depth and insurance, that's possible. But Gainwell, to me, in a loose sense, will kind of assume a Patterson role where there's some different things you can do with him. You can split him out. He can obviously play running back. He can catch. He can kick return. The pass pro I do want to look at. I got some comments that he's a good pass protector. I think he's a willing one, as you said. That was kind of my report on him coming out of Memphis, was that he could do it probably better than his size would suggest, but there are just some limitations on blitzing A gap, B gap linebackers. And so I do want to dive into that some more. But yeah, I think the goal of this offseason very clearly, as it should be, is you want some more juice, some more potency, playmaking in that offensive skill room. You had DK Metcalf, which is, of course, your big swing at adding that playmaking power to the offense. Gainwell, to a much lesser degree, offers that, but still is somebody that is a different flavor running back that can hopefully create a couple of big plays and, again, win in those one-on-one open grass situations.
I forgot to look at explosive plays coming out of Memphis for him. Let me
Well, he
pull
was
those.
basically a 1 year guy. He had a great, I think that was his last season there, 2019 or so, or whatever year that was, 2021 it should have been. He had a fantastic year. He had sat out 1 year because of the pandemic. I'm just trying to get my timeline right here. He had
Would
sat out
that been 2020 he set out?
yeah, I mean, that would make sense. Let me just double check here
Uh,
because he had lost 3 or 4 family members, including an uncle he was close to COVID, and so he did not wanna jeopardize anything, and so, yeah, he sat out. Yeah, it was 2019, I apologize. 2019, he ended up having that great year, then sat out, and then got drafted in 2021 in the 5th round because he missed that entire 2020 season.
all right, looks like running plays in 2019 for Gainwell. He had 14 rushes for 20 plus yards on 231 attempts. In 2018, he barely played. 4 attempts, 91 yards, had one explosive play in that. As far as receiving, situational stats go with him, looks like he had 51 receptions in 2019 at Memphis for 610 yards, 3 touchdowns. 8 of those went for 25 or more yards. So a little bit of playmaking there in college. But the thing that I immediately went to, being as how this team really needs some explosive plays and all, was the fact that just five career carries, including the playoffs, have gone for 20 yards or more so far, and none of them over 39.
Which is surprising because you thought he would bust off the occasional big run at some point given the skill set. I do think there's third down value here, and I imagine Pittsburgh's looking at this and saying Jalen Warren, our primary third down back last year, still can obviously play on third down this year, but if he's going to have a more elevated early down, run-focused role, we need to find some good third down options as well, and you don't want to always entrust a rookie to do that out of the gate because that's dicey, especially if you have a veteran quarterback back there like Russ or Rodgers and want to make sure a guy can be protected. So I think Gainwell can also offer that to maybe spell or maybe assume the role. We'll have to see of those third down duties Warren has held since basically early into his rookie season in 2022.
Right. And then once again, like we said, this does nothing to the team potentially adding a running back in the draft. Still expect them to do that.
Does the draft plan or projection change at all now knowing Pittsburgh does not have a second round pick and it's unlikely they would take a running back in the first round, which leaves the third round as a potential starting point to address the position?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that's a perfect starting point, third or fourth round. And this is a deep class. And, I guess the thing is does this maybe change maybe the type of back? Would it be more of a bigger, you know, what, 220 to, 6'1", type bigger back, as opposed to maybe a smaller, shiftier one?
I really don't think it does, to be honest, because it's a 1-year contract for Gainwell, and
Right.
so you're looking long term with the running back. I think you take the best player available, and if it's an additional playmaker similar to Gainwell, I mean that's okay. Just give me playmakers on top of playmakers. I'm okay with doubling up there. So I don't know if it's going to really change at
The
all
type.
the type of running back. Now I guess the question is kind of who the names, because we're talking probably third round, and there's no guarantee of third round. Maybe there's another great player at another position to take there. So who are realistic names from third round and on? Because now you've really eliminated obviously Genty, Hampton, probably the Ohio State kids, and Henderson and Judkins.
Could you
Is
be looking
Caleb
at Caleb?
Johnson?
Yeah, that's where my mind went immediately when you started to ask the question there.
Okay, yeah, I'm not. What does mock draft database say on his projection? Just as kind of one starting point for where he's being mocked to. It's probably in that third round, early second round range. They got him third round, 65th overall. So that's early third round. But that would be plausible if there were a couple running backs ahead of him. Push some guys like Johnson down. You got Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, Devin Neal from Kansas. How about Cam Scadaboo from Arizona State? All names to look at. I know they probably like Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. So those are probably names to talk about more often.
Yeah, and we'll further we get into this, we'll see where they go with the coaches on the pro day and who comes in on visit. But and yeah, I just unless they get a second rounder back somehow within this thing, it feels like third or fourth round would potentially be a spot for a running back.
Right, right. That's kind of, I mean, it's almost you have to, unless you are doing it in round one, which, unless, is Hampton at all a possibility at 21 days?
Man, I just we've come to at least where we're at right now, barring this team getting a second round back or trading up or whatnot, it's going to probably be defensive line with that
Yeah,
21st pick.
I'm with you. Just want to talk out loud. And as you said, we'll see the pro day trail, the pre draft visits, and hopefully get a better outlook and projection closer to April's draft, which is really only about 5, 6 weeks away.
All right.
All right, Dave, where to? Any other final thoughts on Gainwell before I move us along?
No, just I'm with you. I want to look more at kind of the pass protection stuff and ability after first contact and contact balance and all like that. I've watched about I don't know 25 plays of them, I think.
Okay. And also, kudos to Brian Baldinger. Either he had a little birdie tell him about Kenneth Gainwell, because he had talked about earlier in the day before the news was announced about, Pittsburgh should explore Kenneth Gainwell. And a couple hours later, they did.
All right, right. Sounds like a good kid. Obviously played with Calvin Austin III at Memphis, so he'll have a friend on the team in that, and in a guy in Gainwell there. So I would expect this to be done. And like I said, I think the contract will be under $2 million.
And check out the film room that our Ross McCorkle just posted Wednesday morning on Kenneth Gainwell to learn all about him. All right, Dave, let's talk about some other news of the day. A couple former Steelers officially signing or agreeing to terms elsewhere. Larry Ogunjobi, who was released by Pittsburgh earlier this week, has signed a 1-year deal worth over $8 million, I think up to $10 million with the Buffalo Bills. And so Ogunjobi quickly lands on his feet as the Bills retool their front. They added Joey Bosa, now add Larry Ogunjobi.
Boy, that feels like an overpay to me. They did Larry Ogunjobi a favor, though. He's going to make more money than he would have made with the Steelers in 2025. He's scheduled to make $7 million with the Steelers. They of course cut him, and here he is getting and has an up to of I think what 10 something million and all like that. I just I you know. He can still get after the passer, I think, to some degree. I think he's deteriorated as a run defender. I just think overall was a disappointing 2024 season for him. We talked that we expected him to be out the door, and he was. And the fact that they did so without having a replacement in the room yet, I think tells you a lot about at least what the Steelers thought about him. Now the Bills, the Bills watched their tape and they're expecting him probably to fit along with who's over there, Ed
Oliver
over there. They probably he's not going to be an every down player for him, obviously over there, and if they utilize him probably more as a one gap shooting pass rusher. Maybe that's how he could get his snaps and all like that. But to me, this feels like an overpay on the Bills' part. But kudos. Look, I have nothing against Larry Ogunjobi. Good guy overall. Was the Steelers' Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate this past season. Quiet leader. Probably going to miss a couple of games moving forward because of minor nicks and injuries and all like that. But to me, this feels like an overpay.
Yeah, I was surprised at the contract details as well, even if it is just 1 year, but maybe there was competition, maybe a market, not entirely sure the driving decision behind where that price tag came in. And, echo your thoughts. I think Ogunjobi can flash, it's just too inconsistent. Staying healthy is going to be key for him, but as he gets into his 30s, the odds of him staying healthier dwindle, obviously. So wish him well, as you said. Support players getting paid, all for it. Good guy. So happy for him personally, but surprised at the details of that contract.
Yeah, he should send the Steelers a thank you note.
For sure. Van Jefferson heading down south to Nashville to Tennessee, signing a 1 year deal or agreeing to a 1 year deal with the Tennessee Titans for I think that's $2.5 million, so pretty reasonable contract there. I mean Jefferson has a purpose, a role. He's can block and dig out safeties, but obviously the role that Pittsburgh had him in last year as a number 2 receiver was laughably over the top, and so I assume the Titans will hopefully be planning something more reduced and reserved for Van Jefferson this year.
Yeah, I hate to go on. I mean, the Steelers, former players here, but this feels like an overpay as well too. Even though it's only $2.5 million. I mean, he does get to go. Isn't he from Tennessee?
Is he? I honestly don't know.
I think I saw something about him going back home or
I'll
something
look.
like that. But look, best luck. The only way he was going to come back to Pittsburgh was if he re-signed on another veteran benefit deal. That, and even so, they probably said, good luck, go find yourself some work elsewhere there. So obviously, I'm not surprised that he's not re-signing with the Steelers. Good on him, getting worth up to $2.5 million. So there's probably some playtime or performance type incentives involved in this, but this probably not going to qualify, not going to be a big enough contract or playing time either for him to hit the compensatory value board as well too. So all it is it's a newsy item because he's leaving the Steelers and going elsewhere.
Right, and just for anyone wondering, Pittsburgh will not get any compensatory value for Larry Ogunjobi because they cut him. You don't get any value for players that you released. And to answer your question, yes, Van Jefferson from Brentwood, Tennessee, which according to Google is 16 minutes south of Nashville. So
There you
right
go.
at home for Van Jefferson.
He's over there in Ross McCorkle's territory down there
Yeah,
now.
they can go hang out, I'm sure.
Right.
But happy. I mean, he's a good guy, good locker room presence. So I think the contract is probably not guaranteed, and also I'm sure pretty reasonable. And that Titans receiving room's looking pretty thin too, right? I don't know exactly who all they have besides Calvin Ridley. They lost Westbrook Akine, and the room's pretty thin otherwise. So maybe there was a chance for Jefferson to carve out a number 3, number 4, big package, big personnel, run blocking role with the Titans.
Am I being too tough on these former guys?
Well, I think Ogunjobi pretty universally accepted as that was a surprisingly high number. I think Jefferson is more reasonable, and we are in a salary cap era that is larger than ever before, so numbers always just get inflated. I mean, the minimum for these guys now is probably what $1.5 million or so for Van Jefferson's tenure. So to be at $2.5 million isn't too much of a stretch.
Okay.
That's my view of it. Not that it's a surprise, not that anyone is upset about some of these guys leaving, but just to kind of pan out for a second, how many snaps is Pittsburgh losing from 2024 with all the free agents departing? Talk about a different looking roster and team, and in many ways that's needed and a good thing. But I mean, just what is the sheer volume of snaps that are leaving the Steelers?
Oh, let's see if we can answer that question here. Justin Fields played 408 offensive snaps. Russell Wilson 719. Najee Harris 569 regular season snaps. Van Jefferson 721. That was probably 621 too many. Who else here has
James Daniels.
James Daniels 208. there. Obviously, Dan Moore, 1,113 regular season snaps. He played 98.58% of the snaps last year for the Steelers on offense. There, other side of the football. Let's see.
Ogunjobi.
Ogunjobi, where's Ogunjobi on my list here? 494 snaps on defense for Ogunjobi. Who else is out the door?
Dante Jackson.
Dante Jackson played. Where's Dante? 780 defensive snaps for him.
Anybody else that's officially signed that I'm missing? Oh, Landon Roberts.
Landon Roberts, 478 defensive snaps.
So on that alone, and that's not even I'm not even including Russell Wilson in that because he's technically not lost yet,
Right.
and not including other departing pending free agents that have not re-signed, say your Loudermilks of the world, Calvin Andersons of the world. That is 4,771 offensive and defensive snaps combined across those names you mentioned.
All right. How many are actual losses?
Well, yeah, that's the counterpoint is how much do you miss all those guys? And obviously there's talented players and you have to, you still valued some of the things that Najee Harris brought and, you have to project what Broderick Jones will be this year. I think at some point you may miss Dan Moore depending on what happens with Broderick Jones. So yeah, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is just recognition of it's a lot of snaps to fill. It's a lot of new faces that will have to be brought in or new roles or elevated roles for guys to replace, what's going to be probably over 5,000 snaps by the time the dust settles.
All right. And well, let's see who else is likely. I mean, I'm surprised Van Jefferson found work this early, to be honest with you.
Same.
I thought it might take Larry. I don't know. The defensive tackle list sure has dwindled down real quick, right? So probably not a shock that Larry found work.
Right. And other guys that could end up departing, Mike Williams, Isaiah Loudermilk.
I have a feeling they'll re-sign the Steelers where re-sign Loudermilk on a veteran benefit deal.
That would make sense. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but just talking about guys that are at least pending free agents and guys that will officially become free agents at 4 p.m. later today.
All right, we're still waiting to find out for sure about Darius Slay coming in the door. We talked about Gainwell. Let's see, the trade should be official later today when it comes to DK Metcalf, and then we'll wait to find the specifics on the deal related to him. What else do we have?
No compensatory picks for Pittsburgh in 2025. That was officially released by the league yesterday. That is no surprise. Pittsburgh, though, on track to get plenty of compensatory picks for 2026 for losing some of the free agents we just rattled off. Should also hopefully get official details, as you said, on the trade, sending that second round pick to Seattle for the DK Metcalf deal. Najee Harris, his contract numbers came in for the Chargers, and they are going to potentially impact the comp value formula for the Steelers, where it's a smaller contract than initially released and tweeted out by the reporters, Dave.
Yeah, 1-year deal with a $3.75 million signing bonus, a $1.5 million base salary that's fully guaranteed, up to $4 million. We, like we said the other day, have to kind of wait to see if there's any incentives or whatnot in these things. Up to $4 million in rushing yards incentives for Najee Harris. That makes his base $5.25 million. And a max value of $9.25 million there. The Steelers they loathe doing incentives, especially for non-quarterbacks. So that was a no-go right there. And when you look at what's Jaylen Warren's second round tender amount?
It's $5 million and change.
Yeah. So, Najee's base of what he's going to earn in signing bonus and base salary is right at about what Jaylen Warren's scheduled to earn right now. Now, obviously, Najee has the ability to earn $4 million more, but this is just a 1-year deal with him. So it's kind of, I guess, a little reflective of what the league thinks about him, along with the fact that the running back class in the draft is expected to be pretty good. And, Najee to his credit, hasn't missed any games, but he does have a lot of carries up underneath his belt going back to college and the NFL right now. Now Harbaugh there in LA evidently tried to recruit him at Michigan before he went to Alabama, and Najee obviously gets to go back to the West Coast. That'll make him happy, and there's not a I mean, there's a pretty decent media presence, I guess, overall in LA, but they're covering two teams, so it's kind of split there. So he'll probably be a little bit happier over there, and I think more than anything, like we said, the blocking scheme and how they'll utilize him will probably play more into his favor over there overall. So he very easily could have another 1,000-yard season if he stays healthy and plays plays at least 16 of 17 games. I don't think that's out of the question there. But the fact of the matter is that his base value is $5.25 million.
Yeah, it's a really low, cheap number. We just saw the running back market heat up this past year with Barkley and Jacobs and Derrick Henry, and Barkley got that big extension to put him at $20 million per year. Now, no one will confuse Najee Harris and Saquon Barkley, but you thought the market might lift up some of those names. But I think, as you pointed out, and what's pretty obvious is this deep running back class is telling teams we're not going to pay for the position. We can go draft it on a cheap 4-year contract. So, we'll see what the incentives are, how attainable they are, and if Harris stays healthy, maybe a good chance he's able to reach all of those. But yeah, it just kind of says the market was pretty light for Najee Harris.
Yeah, look, I mean, this base amount is lower than what his 5th-year option would have been.
Yeah, which was 6.79 million. So I guess to ask the question again, and I know I mentioned last time, you kind of have to see the other shoes to drop and how the whole running back room looks in Pittsburgh. But in hindsight, was it a bad decision for Pittsburgh to decline that 5th-year option?
I mean, let's see how he does in that system, obviously with the Chargers and all like that. I mean, what's a damn it, we messed up type season for Najee in that scheme with the Chargers, 1,500 yards, 1,400 yards.
Probably not that high. If he gets around 1,200, which was his career watermark, if there's more efficiency, if there's a higher yards per carry, more explosive plays, might be more in the details of the production than the overall production, because volume production has never been Harris's issue.
Right. All right.
All right, where to from here, Dave? Let's talk about the Pro Day circuit. Mike Tomlin spotted out there on the trail for the first time this Pro Day season. He's at Georgia today to check out the Bulldogs prospects. I don't know if there's one particular name that strikes you as he's got a good chance to become a Steeler. They got a bunch of first-round guys that are more linebacker, edge rushers that shouldn't be in the cards for Pittsburgh. A couple offensive linemen to watch in the maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th round kind of range. Some later day 3 picks as well, but Georgia always a stopping place for Tomlin, so no surprise to see him down there.
Yeah, and his daughter goes to school down there too, right? So he gets to check in on his daughter while down there.
True, good point there. So any Georgia prospects? I mean, I look at maybe Nazir Stackhouse later, day 3 type of a guy. Maybe a Trevor Etienne, which is kind of a little Gainwell-like in terms of their size and style and how they play. Maybe a little more quick than fast, can catch the ball. A little bit of versatility with him. Anything on those guys or any other Georgia prospects you're keeping an eye on?
Let's see. Trevor Etienne's down there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but just mentioned him. Yeah, like a little Gainwell type of running back.
Yeah. So trying to look down the list here. I don't think Brinson's not doing anything, is he? Did they say is Brinson working out today?
I do not know. I know Walker is not working out. He's got a thigh injury. He's going to hold a workout April 17th. I know Williams, not in contention for Pittsburgh. Michael Williams probably didn't run great 40 times. 4.7s, 4.8 seems to be what he's putting up.
Let's see. Malachi Starks, I think, probably going to go through the paces there. Are there any offensive linemen, tackles?
Yeah. More interior. Jared Wilson, one of the better centers in this year's class. Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild, going to be some of the topper tier interior offensive linemen.
All right. And we know there's at least one other Steelers personnel there. We haven't figured out who exactly that is. And we're also going to wait and see if maybe Omar showed up there.
Yeah, Tomlin rarely travels alone, so we know we've already confirmed one personnel member's there, just haven't been able to place the face yet. It's not Omar Khan. So we'll check to see if Khan is there. Wouldn't be a surprise if Khan was still back in Pittsburgh, kind of holding down the fort at the team facility. But yeah, there should be other scouts, maybe a positional coach or two that also makes the trip. We'll see if Pat Myers there for all those
All
offensive
right.
linemen.
All right. Real notable find by you at the Tennessee Pro Day.
Yeah, Zach Gazani, the wide receivers coach down there in Tennessee for the Volunteers Pro Day yesterday. Now, it's not a shock to see Azani there. He coached at Tennessee for several seasons, so he's got good connections and a place he knows well. But I'm sure he was not just there to say hello to old buddies, because they got a couple of receivers down there that are certainly worth noting, none bigger than Dante Thornton from Tennessee, who's a height, weight, speed guy that tore up the combine, a 4.3 40, and a guy that, what did he measure in it? I'm not even sure, 6'3", 6'4", 200 plus pounds, a big play vertical threat, averaged 25 yards per catch last year for Tennessee. I just threw on his tape last night. I'm writing the report on him, should go up in a day or two. Plays to that speed, super explosive, maintained speed throughout his route, shows a second gear. You know, he played in that kind of funky RPO-based, up-tempo, wide split type of Tennessee offense, but talk about physical traits and upside, you talk about Dante Thornton.
All right. Any further cliff notes on him I should look for? What was his best game last year?
I mean, he had 3 games, I think, last year where he had no more than 3 catches and over 100 yards. So I don't know if there was one particular game that stuck out. I can kind of just tell you. I mean, he's not a volume guy. I think he caught 26 passes last year for 661 yards and 6 touchdowns. So it's just real feast or famine. It's like the old days where, Jimmy Orr, like the 1960s receivers, would have these kind of crazy numbers where it was, they would catch 30 balls for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns, something like that. So he's only got 65 career receptions, but 10 touchdowns. He was truly a big play kind of a guy. The route tree's limited, but he can block. There's effort there. He's got size. And again, the physical tools are off the charts. So maybe the Vanderbilt game, I hadn't watched that one yet. 3 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But there are a lot of video game type numbers for Dante Thornton.
When it comes to this class not being the best, are we talking about 3rd, 4th round grade here?
Yeah, he was really off the radar before the combine. I think even a lot of draftniks hadn't given him a lot of love, but you run 4.3 flat at his size, especially, you're going to get on radar. So, I think they're going to be, the media's going to have to kind of catch up to where he's at. And you're right, in this down class, probably going to get pushed up because of that. I'm not sure if he's still viewed as a day 3 prospect because there's some rawness to his game still, but yeah, I think we'll probably go above projections. It wouldn't shock me if he was a day 3 or round 3, early round 4 type of guy, but I think his projection's a little bit murky because we're just kind of getting to know Dante Thornton.
All right. Zach Gazani certainly was not ignoring him yesterday. There's good video of him watching him go through some of the paces of some of his workouts here from the ball. Really several sources, independent reporters covering there, and even the Tennessee Volunteers Twitter account has good footage of Zach Gazani having both eyes on him during some of the drills.
Yeah, which is certainly notable. Should also mention there's another receiver there. Somebody had alerted me to that. Brew McCoy from Tennessee was a little more volume guy, 39 receptions, 472 yards, and 2 touchdowns last year for the Volunteers. USC transfer back in 2020, 2021. So there is another receiver down there, but Thornton's going to be the top name to watch.
All right. What else pro day related do we have that you've come across or that we've come across? We found somebody at CMU, right?
Yeah, still working to confirm because they've hired so many new people. We're getting kind of familiar with some of the faces. I mean, they had somebody at Oklahoma, again, trying to track down the exact person, just trying to place faces, kind of blurry faces we're trying to figure out. They had Max Gruder at Kentucky, who's in the pro or just overall scouting department. So in terms of like intriguing names and positional coaches or high end staff, it's Zani at Tennessee, it's Tomlin at Georgia. The other ones are a little more just kind of housekeeping for us than anything to really take note of. But we have our tracker going. They were at Kentucky, Tennessee, and Oklahoma yesterday with the big 3, and they had scouts at all 3.
All right, and we will continue to effort as the Georgia Pro Day. I don't think that's being covered. I looked on SEC Network. I didn't see where they were covering it live today. But the good thing is, I think you said you sent me a link of the Oklahoma full pro days out there, right? And
Yep.
we ought to get pretty good footage of the Georgia Pro Day later today.
Yeah, I imagine that'll be pretty well covered overall. All right, Dave. Anything else here? Trying to maybe keep this a little shorter show
Right.
today. Any other news that's coming across the wire right now?
How about your remaining free agent list?
Yeah, I just wanted
Best fits for the Steelers, I guess.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a couple of new names here to kind of reset the stage with so many free agents off the board, and already some names on this list have already signed. I had Greg Gaines, a defensive lineman, run stuffer. He's re-signing with Tampa Bay. Just to kind of mention some different names, I think at wide receiver, trying to think about playmakers, big play guys. That's the theme of the offseason for Pittsburgh's offense. How about Marquez Valdez-Scantling with the Saints last year, averaged 22 yards on just 17 catches, but had 4 touchdowns, big play guy, vertical, threat has always been his game. A little bit older, but would be a cheap contract overall. You mentioned Tyler Lockett. I put Lockett on the list. I think whether the quarterback is Russ or Rodgers, that would fit somebody who can get open, do more of the dirty work underneath when you have those 2 big vertical outside threats in George Pickens and DK Metcalf. Some offensive linemen. Could Fred Johnson make a return to Pittsburgh? Dave, I thought he might have a market. Started 6 games last year. Didn't have great performances, but well liked in that locker room. He's got left tackle, right tackle versatility. Could that be a possibility as well? Because Pittsburgh needs some tackle depth.
Yeah. What do you imagine the value is on Fred at this point?
I mean, there is that O-line tax, and he's still pretty young. I think he's 27, so it's always you always kind of overpay for the position, as we've seen with Dan Moore and other offensive linemen in this free agency class. I don't know, $5 million per year, just to put a number on it. Does that sound right?
I don't know. I haven't watched any of his tape recently, so I he's going to have some market because he's a tackle, right? So
Right, right, and still pretty young. So just a thought there. Also, if you do want to make a swing for Mekhi Becton to replace McCormick and give yourself really good depth with McCormick as a backup, he's still out there. I don't know what the market's going to be for Becton right now. I thought maybe he'd come off the board early for an offensive lineman, his resurgence in Philadelphia last year. So just want to keep an eye on that one. Probably unlikely, but just as a little more pie in the sky, want to mention Mekhi Becton.
educate me on Adam Prentice.
Yeah, the fullback from New Orleans, and can this Arthur Smith offense use a fullback? I know Juszczyk is out there; he's being released by the Niners, but at 34, in a little, just probably not a great fit overall at this point. But Prentice is a true lead blocker who played a bunch on special teams, and that's probably what Pittsburgh would look for in a fullback: somebody who can, lead the way in short yardage and help out, run down kicks and punts. Blocked a punt last year, so it's kind of a young, true fullback that would probably fit what the Arthur Smith offense is looking for.
Was he the one they moved around quite a bit in there, H-back and all? And
That might be Taysom Hill you're thinking of.
I thought.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm sure Prenton's wore different hats, but you think about the H-back kind of a guy that kind of go to Taysom Hill in New Orleans.
I'm trying now, and I went through some of my notes, New Orleans notes, couldn't find anything that I wrote on him specifically last time I looked at their tape. Okay, let's see. Jerry Tillery is a guy that we've written and talked about a little bit before on the site, wondering if the Steelers would have interest in. And Charles Omenihu is someone that they looked at pre-draft, didn't they?
Did they? I should have checked that out. I don't remember exactly on Omenihu. That does ring a bell. And Tillery was a guy whenever he came out at Notre Dame, we thought this is a Steeler type of a guy, a true prototypical 5-tech type of build. Now his career is not gone the way that he was drafted to be, but started 11 games last year for Minnesota, blocked two field goals, 28 years old. If you want him to kind of serve, say, the Loudermilk role as that backup base rotational end, that would make a lot of sense. Omenihu was kind of that tweener, a little DeMarvin Leal-like in terms of potential usage, but had a good postseason run despite only playing, I think, 6 games in the regular season. In the playoff run for the Chiefs, had a sack, 3 tackles for a loss, to get pass deflection. So that'd be a cheap guy to give yourself good depth, potentially at edge, 4th outside linebacker, sub-package rusher type.
All right. Now with your revised list here, call your shot on 2 guys. If you were to think best chances to potentially sign with the Steelers of the guys on this updated list.
Oh man, that's tough to say. I'll say one name I had mentioned: Marcus Epps, the safety of the Raiders, who tore his ACL week 3 last year, but hopefully will be ready for week 1 this year. Had started 37 games straight previously for the Raiders, and could he follow Gerald Alexander, who was a Raiders safety coach last year before coming over to replace Grady Brown in Pittsburgh? The safety market is really looking poor right now, Dave. In Pittsburgh, they need help there. Still have nothing behind Fitzpatrick and Elliott. DeMar Hamlin just went off the board. He's re-upping and staying in Buffalo. The safety options look really poor. The draft class is just okay at best. And so could Epps, as a flyer to get healthy on a 1-year deal, that would make sense. The other names, I'm not sure if I would, I think Tillery, maybe. I'll mention Darnay Holmes as well from the Raiders. He had kind of replaced Nate Hobbs when Hobbs missed time last year. He's a guy that can play the run, he can do work behind the line of scrimmage. So yeah, maybe Darnay Holmes, maybe Marcus Epps, Tillery, but I'm just kind of guessing here.
All right. Good work there with updated list there. We'll keep probably every few, especially after this weekend comes, because things will really slow down by Friday or Saturday. It usually does, right? When it comes to, because I mean, a lot of these guys are going to come off the board here in the next 48 hours, I would think here. Tell me about what you think about the thoughts of former Steeler offensive lineman Willie Colon talking about Aaron Rodgers fit in the Steelers locker room.
Yeah, he said a couple different thoughts. I mean, one was about the Arthur Smith Rodgers dynamic and that Rodgers would be running the show, which isn't a shocking thought for a quarterback of his status and with his resume. Now, Cologne also said he thought Rodgers would fit well in the locker room, which I think makes sense. I don't know if Rodgers. I don't think he's a bad locker room guy. I don't think he's, actively toxic in any sense. He's certainly got high standards and he expects a lot out of his wide receivers, and young receivers rarely, produce and have a role because of those expectations are set so high. But I mean, I can definitely see what Cologne is saying by believing that Rodgers would be a good presence in the locker room.
All right. Do we have anything else to get to here?
I think that's it. What are your thoughts on what Rodgers could potentially that locker room dynamic look like? I mean, there certainly is a concern about the powder keg of big personalities with
Right.
Metcalf and Pickens and Rodgers. So, what is your kind of your standpoint?
I just wonder how much he'll try to dictate things, and tell Arthur Smith what's up, how he's going to do things, what he will and won't do. I do wonder about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair and it's unpredictable, and he's not even a Steeler yet, so maybe things to think about more down the road. But I'd be a little less concerned about that potentially than I would just the overall dynamic of Pickens and Metcalf and Rodgers and trying to feed every mouth in a run heavy offense that's not going to always be throwing the ball 50 times a game and shouldn't be, and certainly not at Rodgers' age. So
He
yeah, I don't
certainly
know.
he certainly won't be afraid to tell guys that they ran the wrong routes, right? We know that.
Right.
And DK Metcalf included. And he's not I don't think you have to worry about Aaron Rodgers running down the complete roster of the depth chart of offensive linemen and wide receivers and running backs and tight ends during every press conference, making sure not to forget anybody to hurt their feelings, right? Like Russell Wilson. More, he'll, if somebody does something good, he'll obviously highlight it, but in the same breath, I don't think will be afraid to say that somebody, didn't run the right route or something.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be high expectations. Players will be held accountable. And like I said, I'm going to do the study should the Rodgers signing occur to look at young receivers. How well will a Roman Wilson be able to make an impact for a second year guy that missed his entire rookie year? Typically, those young guys just have a tough time getting on that moving train with Rodgers. What did Malachi Corley do with the Jets this year, for example? Just kind of one recent talking point. Let me look up what his production was. It wasn't much. He caught 3 passes this year as a third rounder. Now he was raw coming out of Western Kentucky. He didn't have much of a route tree, so it's not probably all on Rodgers. But veteran receivers are the guys that Rodgers wants, and those are the guys that will play.
All right.
What do you make of the report from Jerry Dulac that says Pittsburgh would circle back to Russell Wilson should they miss out on Aaron Rodgers? Is that even how does that even look, considering that you've clearly snubbed Wilson from being in your top 3 level of, quarterback candidates?
I think all this is just cover your ass reporting, to be honest with you. Can you say ass on a podcast?
I guess so.
Uh, nobody's had a good grip on this thing, Alex. Really, right?
Sure, the reporting has bounced back and forth every which way, but say that Rodgers goes to the Giants or does not play for Pittsburgh, whatever the outcome is. What does the team do from there? You wrote about Kirk Cousins potentially becoming Plan C for, I assume that means Plan C for Cousins.
You like that, right? But here's my thoughts on Cousins after looking. I think we got asked about that by a reader or somebody like that, or someone in the live show. I forget where we did. So I dove down that rabbit hole, just kind of wondering if this thing strings out a little bit further with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And let's suppose Aaron Rodgers, for whatever reason, chooses the Giants. Let's say the Steelers really are not high on Russell Wilson at X price or whatnot. Could Kirk Cousins enter the chat here? First and foremost, the Falcons don't have to do anything with Kirk Cousins. They've got another guy. They obviously got Penix under contract on a rookie contract. Now, Cousins, come March 17th, he gets that $10 million in 2026, that roster bonus fully guaranteed. But within that, and it is 25 and whatever, 24 and a half, whatever the number, 23 and a half, whatever the number is, base salary for 2025 is guaranteed. So, barring Kirk cut, and I think we'll see what they do. Might the Falcons end up restructuring Cousins' contract to bring the cap charge down to clear cap space here? If they hold on to him past March 17th and decide not to trade him or cut him, and then look at him as a potential guy that if things don't go well for the team and they get to the trading deadline, then dump him that way. Mike Mayock made a comment on Rich Eisen, I think, asking about talking about Cousins and saying he thinks maybe it's in the Falcons' best interest to maintain control over Cousins just from the potential trade value aspect of him, if they're not in a situation where they've got to dump him and can't get anything in trade value. And the way Mike Mayock kind of explained this makes a little bit of sense there. So, we'll see what happens with Cousins here come March 17th. And look, here's the thing. If they did cut him, it becomes a situation much like the situation that Russell Wilson was in, where you have the offset type money where a team could turn around and say, look, you're already guaranteed, 20-something million from the Falcons, have them pay that, come sign with us for the minimum, and then let's see where things go as far as as far as moving past this year and all. Would Kirk Cousins be willing to do that, especially if he could go to a place, let's say the Giants or Cleveland or Pittsburgh, and start right away? So it's a very interesting aspect, I think, when you look at him and the dynamics. After writing what I wrote about him, and listening to what Mike Mayock said about Kirk Cousins, it feels like maybe we'll see the Falcons retain him past March 17th if they don't trade him. And here's the thing too, if you're a team that did trade for him, I think you try to get the Falcons to eat a little bit of that base salary if possible. But if not, then you become on the hook for that $10 million guaranteed roster bonus in 2026. Now, the thing about that is if you were a team that traded for Kirk Cousins for the contract, let's say as is, and things didn't work out past this year and you cut him, well, then there becomes an offset amount of that 10 million. So you could pretty much probably guarantee, because Kirk Cousins is probably not going to go anywhere next year and sign for 10 million or less, or he could, obviously, but there's a little bit of an aspect of a safety net when it comes to that $10 million roster bonus being guaranteed for a team that traded for him. So it's a quite interesting dynamic. Now, look, he obviously got benched for a reason last year. His play wasn't great. He didn't look anything like the player that played the previous 4 or 5 seasons, whatever it was in Minnesota there. Now, how much was the Achilles an issue there? Here's the thing on top of everything else, his adjusted net yards per passing attempt number wasn't awful. It was right along the lines of a Russell Wilson and an Aaron Rodgers, as far as that goes, as bad as he did play. And his what's the other stat we use? The expected points added was better than both, I think, Rodgers and Wilson too. So as bad as he played, it was still on par with, kind of advanced statistics as far as Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson went. The Steelers do have some sort of kind of history with him dating back to his pro day several years ago. Mike Tomlin and I think Randy Fichtner took him out to a pro day dinner ahead of his pro day. I don't believe they brought him in for a pro day visit that year. And I can't remember, I think Kevin Colbert was at that pro day. Wasn't that the Michigan State pro day that both of them were at? I can't remember. But we know Randy Fichtner was there. We know Mike Tomlin was there. We know he had dinner with him. Good guy overall. It's just the fact that with his age now too, and the kind of year that he came off of, what are you really getting with him? And is it, obviously it's not much of an upgrade over a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, but it might be more in line from a pay aspect, especially if you traded for that contract. I said a lot there, didn't I?
I just view the contract as untradeable. It's just too much money for a guy that's benched, for a guy in his situation. And I know the Falcons have said they want to keep him and they intend to keep him. I still view that as posturing. He wants out, clearly. He's going to be behind a young guy in Penix, and so there's going to be some pressure there if Penix struggles out of the gate. It's just not a healthy situation for Penix to thrive and not a good situation for Cousins or for anybody. So a departure or release just makes the most amount of sense, and I still think that's going to be what ends up happening. I think the Falcons are trying to put on as aggressive and brave of a face as possible, but I just don't see Cousins staying in Atlanta as possible, and I think trading him is impossible.
All right, so you are expecting him to get cut by March 17th?
That's my expectation, yes. I mean, I'm not in the know in Falcons world. I'm just kind of reading what makes sense. Why hold on to this guy that does not want to be here behind, your future of the franchise? Just, it's not a healthy environment for anybody.
24 hours ago, I would have unequivocally said, yeah, I think they cut him. But the more I kind of look into kind of the analysis that's going on with that and trying to control value and all like that, and having the other quarterback on the rookie contract and maybe trying to maintain some sort of trade value potentially later in the year or whatnot, I find myself kind of wondering how slam dunk that is. So I will say 60% chance they cut him, 40% chance they retain him past March 17th.
All right, fair enough. We shall see. Also, I hesitate to call this news, but interesting note to kind of go off what you said earlier. Pat McAfee just reposted a clip from September 28th, 2021. And the quote is an interview with Aaron Rodgers in which Rodgers says, "I love Pittsburgh. It's a great blue-collar town, and Mike Tomlin is a fantastic coach who knows how to lead, and players love playing for it." This was before the Steelers-Packers matchup in 2021. So McAfee has found this clip and reshared it, reposted it, and that certainly seems like it means something in McAfee's world.
Well, I think the show gets underway at noon, does it not?
Yeah, and I did see somebody say that Rodgers will be on, but it wasn't one of the McAfee people, so I'm still not 100% sure if he will be on today, but there was one ESPN reporter that says he expects a resolution today, and if Rodgers is on, then I imagine we'll hear from him about where his next place will be. So we shall see. We shall see, Dave.
And we should see the transaction later today of the Jets officially releasing Aaron Rodgers and making him a June 1st, post June 1st designation.
Right, yeah, that's what has to happen, there, and so that would make sense on a timeline for Rodgers to make that decision today because that's whenever he can officially, get released and become a free agent and go sign somewhere, so, it's not like he had to make a decision Monday or Tuesday because he still couldn't actually put that plan into action until, today when the new league year officially kicks off again, 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, shall we get to about 2 or 3 emails real quick?
Yeah, let's do that and close out today's show.
All right, Garrett from Roanoke, Virginia writes in Malik Harrison in the 53. He says I was sad to see Landon Roberts go, but I think I see the logic of it. He says perhaps Pittsburgh sees Malik Harrison as a 1 for 2 or even 1 for 3, freeing up a roster spot or two. He says Harrison fills Matakevich's special teams role, and he is obviously a rotational inside linebacker replacing Roberts, but it sounds like he also played edge at times for Baltimore. Could he serve as a number 4 edge defender? He says, I like the Harrison signing. Is meant to free up a roster spot or two. Where do you imagine they're looking to add depth on the 53? And he wonders if defensive line. All right. I think I had brought that up to Alex the other day about the edge aspect of Harrison, and he does have a little experience there, but is that really his forte? Is there enough there as an edge guy to be the number 4 guy?
I mean, in a pinch, if injury struck in game, you could. It's a little Jeremiah Moon-like where you can set the edge against the run and give you a competent run defense. As a pass rusher, he's not a true edge rusher, not natural off the edge. He was playing those edge roles and those 5 down fronts the Ravens would use. So, I think his primary role is off-ball linebacker. But if you had to use an extra guy to get through a game, I mean, Harrison could do it.
Right. More than anything, we get the 2-for-1 from the aspect of Matakevich and, taking up some of those snaps from Elena Roberts.
Yeah, and I do get the logic in that. I mean, we'll just have to see roster construction. It's probably not, we're going to sign this guy so we can definitely carry 4 inside linebackers and we can carry this many defense linemen. You're not really in that focus right now, but it's going to give you flexibility as you do formulate your 53-man roster to give you some options in terms of how you construct it, or maybe you only carry 4 inside backers. I have a hard time thinking they would only carry 3 edge guys and have him be the de facto number 4. But in terms of where that spot could be used, again, just depends on how things go in training camp. Maybe an extra DB, maybe you go one heavy on offense. You're not really probably making that signing with the intent of having those plans be so concrete here in March.
All right. Where else will they add on the 53 depth-wise, he asked. I still think you could see a defensive lineman in the cheap come in through the door. We just rattled off. Really, the answer, Garrett, Alex did a great job, kind of is up-to-date, maybe free agent wish list based on what's out there right now. I think that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I think in terms of where they could add, I mean, defensive line, they need to add a safety, but the safety market is pretty thin out there. So those are 2 places. I think getting a veteran offensive lineman in would also be smart, especially a tackle. So those are kind of the spots I'm looking at right now. And then, of course, the whole quarterback situation, your starter, and then you'll need a backup, regardless of who ends up coming to Pittsburgh.
All right, JJ writes in defensive line. He goes, hey, guys, it's JJ from Kentucky. It's been a while since I've wrote in. He says, life is busy, but I always listen to the podcast. My question is non-quarterback related because I'm sure you guys are getting enough of that. Do you think the plan for the D-line is to double up through the draft and after the draft when it no longer counts against comp picks, grab free agents then? He says the amount of D-line getting drafted should cause a few guys to get cut, he says. That's a good point. I just have a feeling Khan is trying to protect the compensatory pick values we could get to go after a quarterback when the draft is in the Steelers' backyard next year. You guys are great as always, and he says he loves the app as well, too. Thanks, JJ. Good to hear from you in Kentucky there. JJ does make some good points here. We've talked about maybe potentially this team doubling up on defensive line in the draft. I don't think that's impossible, as I like to say. More than anything, I think when we're both expecting this team to draft a first-round defensive lineman, at least where things stand right now. Could they potentially double up on a D-line? Yes, I do think, though, at the way this defensive line free agent list is dwindled now, Are you really going to sign a guy that's going to move you off any of your compensatory value at this point? Are you even going to dump enough money into whoever you do sign at this point? As far as defensive line goes, I get the preference, and I also get the preference too of him saying, "Hey, after the draft, you could see one or two vets around the league get cut too." And yeah, that you see that every year. So maybe another guy comes open late in the process that you look at in there as well too. I mean, I think he makes a lot of points. I don't know if there's really a question there other than doubling up on a defensive line and maybe addressing with a cheaper defensive lineman at some point here.
Well, I think the point is that from the email perspective, is that Khan is intentionally not making big splashes in free agency and is going to make some moves post draft. And whenever players get cut, that won't count against the comp formula. You're also potentially pursuing Rodgers, who won't count against the comp formula. Darius Slay, he'll be cut, wouldn't count against the comp formula. And so that's kind of the big brained idea to have those picks for next year. I don't know if that's the approach intentionally. I don't think getting comp picks or not should be the driver of your free agency plan. It should be a byproduct of it. There is certainly value in having extra picks next year to trade up for a quarterback, but you don't want to count on getting comp picks because it's still based on playing time as well, and that's unpredictable. And you want to build the team that can help you now. So I do think there's value in the comp outlook, and that's going to help Pittsburgh next year for sure. But it should never be driving the bus if we're going to approach free agency to get a bunch of comp picks for next year. I don't think that's sound strategy overall. But we'll see. I mean, players will get cut after the draft for sure, and we'll see if Pittsburgh has interest. And also, note here not to involve quarterback talk in this intentionally non-quarterback question, but Pat McAfee just confirmed no Aaron Rodgers on the McAfee show today. He will not be on the Wednesday show.
Okay. All right. And I've always said that you shouldn't make decisions based on compensatory value because things can change. I mean, that shouldn't be the driving force for sure.
Right. But it is certainly a thought, and you recognize that you hopefully are projected to have those picks next year, and that'll be an asset, especially if the plan is maybe to make a move for a quarterback. Then I think that could be a thought the team has. We're not doing this because of the comp formula, but we understand that's where this thing is headed. We knew we were going to lose a bunch of guys. They were going to bring in potential comp picks, and that's going to help us maybe pursue a quarterback next year.
All right. Shall we get to, let me see if I got one more in here real quick. I'm itching to get over to, well, we don't have to worry about, but maybe McAfee does know something. I don't know. We'll see. Brian Tolini writes in, we now know Justin Fields was the team's first choice at quarterback. Why were we only willing to give our preferred option at quarterback around $15 million a year, but we are willing to give our third option around $40 million a year? He says, I'm not saying to give Fields a blank check, but if that is the guy they preferred and they had the money to spend, is now really the time to be conservative. He says, this franchise just seems out of touch right now, and this situation seems grossly mismanaged. Alex, do we know Justin Fields was the team's first choice? Do we unequivocally know that was their first choice? And do we know that they only offered him around $15 million a year, or is this a lot of assumptions going on here?
There are assumptions. We don't know the answer to either of those questions, but we know they offered him a contract, and so he was a choice. And I assume he was the first player they offered a contract to, because you couldn't do that to Darnold or any other outside free agent, and they've not, to my knowledge, offered one to Russ. And so you can logically fit those pieces together and say he was their first choice. But regardless of first or second choice, they offered him a contract, and obviously it did not entice him enough to take it, and he took the Jets deal instead.
And about the give our third option around $40 million a year. Let's wait till the ink dries. That's, I know Mike Florio's out there saying 45 million per, and Alex and I have we had that real loose evaluation of, what do we say, 35 to 44 million or something like that. I mean, we don't know until he signs the deal and all. So it's hard to say what exactly they are offering around. Did they maybe offer Justin Fields the $20 million a year, but just didn't it didn't guarantee second-year money. We don't know.
We don't, but I mean, I would assume if Rodgers signs in Pittsburgh, the deal he would get will be larger than the deal that Fields got with the Jets. Is that fair to say?
You would think.
So I guess the thought is, why did they pinch pennies? If they're willing to spend on Rodgers, why wouldn't they just up the ante a little bit more to get Fields and secure him in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, especially if you're saying that's our guy. We want him. We want him back.
Right, right. So it's a fair question and critique. Now, I guess the answer to that would be each situation is different. No contract situation is one to one alike, and Rodgers has that veteran resume where you're going to have to just naturally pay more for that veteran that's made a bunch of money and coming off a big contract than the first time free agent in Justin Fields. And so that's kind of the dance there of you have to give this guy this money because it has to kind of be some sort of equivalent to what he's previously made before. You can't give Rodgers $20 million; just not going to be his market. So I guess that would be the answer, but I don't think it's a particularly great answer, and I understand the overall question.
And it like I said, like I started with the top of the show. How the hell did we get here with Aaron Rodgers? I tweeted back, several weeks ago, man, I just hope the guy retires because I don't want to go through all of this. And here we are.
Going through all of this.
Even after, this team came out and said, didn't this team come out and make it sound like it was going to be one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? Was it that the feeling that you got out heading into the right after the start of the combine, especially after Art Rooney spoke, and I get the whole Omar Khan not wanting to paint himself in a corner and saying we're keeping all options on the table and all like that, but after Art Rooney spoke, how what kind of percentage would you put on one of Justin Fields or Russell Wilson being signed by this point?
Yeah, we interpreted it that way because they literally said that they wanted, Rooney's preference was to bring one of those two back, and in Khan said they want to bring one of those two back. So I don't know the percentage. It would have been high. It would have been, 75% or so, I guess.
Are you surprised we're here with all this talk and waiting about for Aaron Rodgers at this point? I am.
Yeah, yes and no. A week ago, I thought Fields had a decent chance to come back, and then the reporters came in and talked about the Jets' interest, and it felt like the odds of Fields staying, reduced. And if you're not going to bring Russ back, then you're pretty thin on options in a weak market overall. It doesn't give you a whole lot of starting, guys. So I don't know. I try not to be surprised by much. I just to take it all in and just let the chips fall where they may. But yeah, when you don't have many options to begin with, then you lose a couple of the ones that you wanted in Fields and apparently Darnold, then you're left with whatever's left, and whatever's left is Russ and Rodgers. It is again. I asked the question: what is it about Russ that makes this team so uneager, unmotivated to re-sign him?
Yeah, that would be my question, especially saying that they were, unless it was just a cordial, we'll leave the light on just in case,
Right, but it's not the way they talked about it.
Right.
At least in a general sense, if we want to bring one of those guys back, even though a lot of the offseason conversation was about Fields and how well he played and a little less on Russ. There are obvious reasons of why Russ would not return the 5-game losing streak. Just, how much does he have left? That kind of stuff, the cost. Did he burn bridges, though? It feels like there's more to it than just his overall play, which was certainly not terrible. It feels like there's more to it than on
the only thing that I can think of, because I thought he handled himself perfectly in the media and the community and press conferences and all like that. Is there more to the whole Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson dynamic?
That's where my head goes, and I think especially after that Dulac article came out that really threw Arthur Smith under the bus of that, Wilson was handcuffed and he got his autonomy taken away and he had to do what he was told. We can probably reasonably assume that was coming more from the Russ camp. I'm not saying it came from Russ himself, but probably more from his folks than the Steelers coaching staff. And I imagine that did not sit well with Arthur Smith. And so could that have kind of been the last straw that just said, we don't want to, this relationship is not going to go well if we try to run it back?
Yeah, all that's coming out supposedly from somewhere, while at the same time, Russell Wilson's, still calling himself the Steelers quarterback, wants to be back, hopes to be back, blah, 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 right?
Right. So that's kind of my thought, where the Russ stuff is not just about the on-field play, but there's more to it behind the scenes where the relationships have been strained that just says we want to explore every other option before we try to make this shotgun marriage of a return work.
Right. And, I think people in the past have wondered, is the Russell Wilson most behind closed doors, the same Russell Wilson that people see in the media interviews and all like that. I mean, we obviously don't know. Once again, Russell Wilson did not do anything overall other than certain plays on the field to offend me last season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the play, was mixed and the losing streak was horrible and Russ did not play well. I don't know if I hold Russell Wilson primarily responsible for the losing streak. I think there's a lot of components, and trench play was really bad offensively and defensively, which I think is the driving force behind the losing streak. But if it was just, if you were evaluating Russell Wilson just on the on-field play, I think there'd be more of an interest in bringing him back than there obviously is right now.
All right. All right. All right. We got through all this. I think we've got an hour and 10, 15 in or something like that.
Yeah, just one last quick note here. According to D. Orlando Ledbetter, who's been on the show before, Georgia linebacker Michael Williams had dinner with Mike Tomlin last night. So the pre-pro day dinner, I probably reasonable to assume other Bulldogs were at that dinner, but Michael Williams, a likely first-round pick, pro day dinner with the Steelers, is always notable.
All right. All right. That's good to know.
All right, Dave, we'll come back. We'll plan for Friday like our normal routine right now. And of course, if big quarterback related news breaks, then we'll talk to you guys sooner.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, donate. SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. We got the app and all you can download. Let's see. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. Until probably Friday, unless something big happens. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.